Hello, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Four Star Podcast. I am one of your three hosts, Jordan DuPont. I'm here with Nick DeCola and Andrew Freeman, who is the one of us that really truly knows what he's talking about. The other, Nick and I, we just like goofing around, having a good time watching and talking sports. So going to do a quick introduction and a background on us before we dig into covering our four favorite Chicago sports teams. Yes, for unfortunately for you Chicago White Sox fans, that's not us, and we'd rather convey the fact that we're real fans and of our teams that we enjoy than try and cover something that we're not as invested in or don't know as much about. So in this show, we're going to be digging in heavy on the Cubs, Bears, Blackhawks, and Bulls. A little bit of background on me. Currently, I am living in Arizona. I fled the frigid winters of Illinois this past fall. Currently living in Arizona, and but grew up in the Chicago metro area for the first 22 years of my life. Very, very heavily invested into our Chicago sports teams. Some might say a little too much. May have let the Bears ruin a few of my Sundays. But big fan of our Chicago sports teams. Mostly dig in for me on the Cubs and the Bears, but definitely follow the Hawks and the Bulls as well. So now I'll turn it over to Nick and let him talk a little bit about himself.
Thank you, Jordan. Yeah, I heard you mention that, you're out in Arizona avoiding the frigid weathers, but you keep talking about wanting to come back. So I don't know what that's about. So my name's Nick DeCola. Jordan and I have been friends since we were like 6 on the T-ball. Our first team was the Cubs, actually. That's actually the thing that made me like the Cubs. It's like, oh, that's the team I play for, even though it wasn't the team I played for. Like Jordan said, I've let every team in Chicago ruin every day of my life, at least once or twice. Big Cubs, Bears, Blackhawks. I'm not as big on the Bulls, but I still love the Bulls. I appreciate the Bulls. And I want to see them do well, because when the Bulls do well, Chicago's different when the Bulls are good. Like the Derrick Rose years were great, and I just want to see the Bulls get back to that. That's it.
All right, thank you, Nick. And now, Andrew, I'll turn it over to you and let you plug your social medias and the other work you're doing outside of this show.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for asking me to be part of this podcast. Nick texted me about the idea. I was really excited about it because those who follow me or know what I do, like I write for the Bear Report, along with, Zach Pearson, Yusei Kolschel, all those other guys there covering the Bears. And, we have our podcasts over there, the Picks for Polls podcast that we cover, mostly covering, NFL draft topics and Chicago Bears topics. Had a lot of fun writing for the Bears and covering the Bears, but I've always wanted to do something related to the other teams that, I've been a fan of and have, I guess, covered, ever since I was a little kid. So, this is going to be a really fun opportunity. And, it was awesome because for those who don't know, Nick and I are, blood related here. We're cousins here. So we've known each other forever. And Jordan, I was able to meet you when we were kids as well, through Nick. So always fun hanging out with you whenever we had the chance. And yeah, just very excited about, talking about some of these other teams here and of course, like huge Bears fan, always been a huge Bears fan, ever since growing up. Grew up, of course, through the Lovie years with Devin Hester. Was my first favorite player, I think, because of just how exciting he was to watch on the football field. But also, the Bulls were, my team for such a long time during the Derrick Rose years, kind of like Nick said. So, those have kind of been like my two biggest teams over the past decade or so. Always been a huge Cubs fan, though. Followed them a lot, especially during, their contention years when, they had Rizzo and Chris Bryant and John Lester, all those guys. Those were some of my favorite teams to watch of all time. And Blackhawks, of course, during the dynasty years. It didn't get any better than, watching those Blackhawks. And I vividly remember being at, I think it was with my Little League team, and one of the coaches had season tickets to the White Sox game. So I know we're not talking White Sox, but I'll just say that I was at a White Sox game when this happened. But We were watching, I forget which game it was of the Stanley Cup Finals, but watching the Blackhawks go up against the Flyers for that first title run. Just very exciting. Like it was to the point where like no one was watching the actual White Sox game. We were all just watching the Blackhawks game during the entire time. So really excited to get to it and talk about these teams. And everyone, I'm sure for those who know my work at the Bear Report and Picture Pulse knows my thoughts on the Bears. But I'm excited to share with you guys my thoughts on the Bulls and the Cubs and the Hawks and other topics as it relates to sports around Chicago.
You guys are making me nostalgic for like like back when we were good at sports. Like all the teams, I mean, we'll get into it. The Cubs are trending up, but the Hawks are in the dumpster. The Bears just finished dead last. Like, can we be good? Can we just be good?
No, we're Chicago sports fans. That's how it goes.
Yeah, I guess.
So thank you, Andrew. Definitely, I'm excited to work with both of you guys. I think this is going to be a fun project. For those of you watching, really what we want to do here, again, this is supposed to be a laid-back podcast. We're going to have a good time, but we are going to really dig into stats and our thoughts on what's going on in the Chicago sports media market. But we're definitely going to have some fun here. Like Nick mentioned, him and I have known each other since we were 6. I've known Andrew for a very long time as well. There's definitely going to be some jokes going around and stuff like that to keep it loose and entertaining. So with all that being said, welcome. We are very appreciative that you're here and checking us out. We're going to start by digging in to our beloved, lovable, not so losers right now, but our Chicago Cubs. So to get us started, Nick, Dansby Swanson has been having a killer start to the year. Crushing the ball.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's been not just crushing the ball, but that defense up in the middle infield, like he's making really acrobatic plays. He's so much fun to watch out there. And even you'll hear his teammates, you'll hear David Ross talk about his leadership out there, how he has like this edge to his game, that he's got this competitive edge that, no one, I think the big one is, if you don't know, his wife Mallory is a soccer player for, I believe, Chicago Red Stars, and she was playing with the U.S. national team, and she had a knee injury. So Dansby was up supporting his wife at 4 a.m. at his surgery, went to the ballpark I don't remember what day this was. It was a game against Seattle, middle of the week. Went to the ballpark for a night game, went 4 for 4, and then he's just like, I'm tired, I'm out, which I respect it. Number one, he had a long day. I'd rather him go out, but he still went 4 for 4. Like, he's exhausted, running on fumes, barely eating, and he's still producing at that level. And it was a big thing in the offseason, getting one of the 4 big shortstops, maybe 2 of them, between Dansby, Xander Bogaerts, Trey Turner, and Carlos Correa. And I know it's a week early, and like even if Dansby may not be the best statistical hitter of them all, I think he's a perfect fit for the Cubs. Shoring up that middle infield with Nico, that is our middle infield for the foreseeable future, and that's very exciting. It's very exciting, especially with the new shift rules. It's really important to have super athletic middle infielders, and Cubs got them.
I'd agree. Just to piggyback off of what you're saying there, not that I'm cheating and have Baseball Reference up in the background here, but Dansby is currently hitting at a 333 clip with a 407 on base percentage. I mean, that's astronomical. I can't remember the last time we've seen a Cubs hitter start the season this well, to be completely honest with you. But Andrew, anything to add? I definitely think they're passing the eye test right now.
Yeah, I actually wanted to talk a little bit about another Cub who's been having a strong start to the year, Patrick Wisdom, our third baseman here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Leading the team in OPS right now, leads the team in home runs with 6 so far. He's gone off to a hot start, and that's something they've kind of needed because, the home run department hasn't been the strongest out of the gate, especially, and we've seen with this, Cubs team in the past where they've been very home run reliant, at least, you look at their contention years. It almost felt like, especially in the later years of that, where they're almost too home run dependent, in my opinion. But you look at that right now, and it's a very strong start. And you know, I don't want to get into batting average because batting average is not. We're past the point where batting average is the most important thing for judging a hitter these days. But batting average isn't great. But again, he's getting on base. He's slugging the ball really well, hitting the crap out of the ball as well. And that's just something you want to see from a guy this early on in the year.
It's the money ball that we've been wanting to see. I mean, I know there were a lot of questions surrounding Patrick Wisdom. If I remember right, it was last year he got into a little bit of a slump, but definitely picking it up so far to start the year.
Yeah, definitely. I do want to say one more thing about Wisdom. It is really key that he's getting off to this big start because, I mean, we could talk about how great the Cubs are playing, but one of the weaknesses in the lineup is that there isn't a whole lot of power in that lineup. Dansby's not really a power bat. They don't have a lot of power bats coming up. Our first baseman is Eric Hosmer, which we'll get into, but that power's got to come from somewhere. I'm happy it's coming from Wisdom, and like Andrew said, you don't want to be reliant on the home run ball the same way that Cubs teams were past, where you just got Javi up there and the ball's either going 500 feet or he's just missing it entirely.
Well, now he's just missing it entirely.
Now he's just missing it entirely. I don't know what's happened with him. Like, I think he needs a change of scenery. I think he's just trying to get the Tigers to buy him out or something like that. Because he just hates playing for them. I could tell. Like, the Javi I know wouldn't forget how many outs there were. That's not the same Javi that, like, mind warped I don't even remember, the Pirates first baseman into trying to tag him, even though all he had to do was touch first, and still one of the most insane plays I've ever seen in my life. I don't even know what I was talking about. Power. Yeah.
Yeah, circling back to power bats.
Circling back to power bats. Cubs got to find that power from somewhere. I'm glad we're getting it from Wisdom. Hopefully, once we start calling up like Matt Mervis, we get power from there, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think as it sits right now, the production we're getting has been, I mean, it's certainly more than I was expecting. I was not expecting us to be 8-6 to start the year, 2 games behind the Brewers for first place. I think that's probably a pretty general consensus among the fan bases. They're exceeding our expectations, and we only have guys coming up. Seiya Suzuki just came back from injury. Nick, like you mentioned, we got Matt Mervis down at AAA. I saw a clip, and I know this is way down the road, but saw a clip of Pete Crow Armstrong just completely deking out a third baseman when he should have been out by a mile. Circling back to Javi Baez, I mean, we got a guy in the pipeline that can do stuff like that. So, I'm really excited to see what winds up happening this year, but definitely a lot to look forward to in the future as well. Another thing we got going for us right now is our awesome pitching.
Oh my gosh. Starting pitching, especially at the top of the rotation, Marcus Stroman, Justin Steele, they've both made 3 starts. I think they've given up a combined, I don't even know how many runs. It hasn't been many. Let's put it that way.
5.
5. They've given up 5 combined runs in 3 starts. That is insane. They're both pitching really well, and the Cubs are going to need that because, like I said, with the lack of power, this isn't a team that you expect to put up a lot of runs. So you're going to need starting pitching to go deep into games. You're going to need to limit the amount of runs that you give up the other team. You got to score more runs than the other team. Make sure they score
nothing or 15-3. Yeah, that's all you got to do.
Really simplifying it there, Nick.
Yeah. Well, you hope. Yeah.
But hey, it's a simple game, right?
It's a simple mate. You just gotta score more runs than your opponent. It's not that hard.
Yeah. I mean, it's really good to see the pitching being as good as it is right now. I think that's I hope that's something that that can be a strength of this team, because when we get later in the season and hopefully they're in a position where they can keep this up and are in playoff contention by the end of the year. But we know how important pitching is, and not just your starters, but having a deep bullpen as well. If that's something that can keep up, and maybe let's say they add a couple arms to the rotation later on at the trade deadline, and we're getting way ahead of ourselves here, obviously,
right.
But
still early.
Shohei Ohtani.
Still way early, right?
Shohei Ohtani.
Let the kid dream.
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves when we're in April here and we haven't even got to the dog days of the baseball season, but I hope that pitching can be a strength of this team. And like, Jordan kind of said it already, but like I had very low expectations for this team going into the year because I didn't love, all the things he did in the off season. Definitely had my questions. Cody Bellinger signing was odd, in my opinion. I mean, it's a
Definitely
1-year
questionable.
flyer, but he's not having the strongest start. He's been better than I guess the last couple of years. So
He hit a massive home run today.
Yeah.
Home run today. I think he's starting to turn it around.
Yeah, so hopefully he
I
can
believe.
because the talent is there. Like when
Yeah.
he was at his best in LA, like he was one of the best hitters in baseball. So you hope that he can get back to that, but it's been rough for him the last couple seasons. So
At the worst, like even if his bat's average or a little below average, he's still an elite base runner if he can find a way on, and he's an elite defensive center fielder. So it provides value that way. We already know what that's like with Jason Hayward for the past 8 seasons or however long.
Speaking of which,
I was gonna say.
that's a perfect transition. I mean, you want some proof that Cody Bellinger is an elite defensive player. Look at what he just did to Jason Hayward, robbing that home run. I mean, that was an incredible play. Absolutely incredible play.
Also, how about Jason Hayward like just turning back the clock and becoming like a very good hitter for like the first time in like a half decade?
Yeah, thanks for making us realize we wasted like $160 million for that contract, I think.
Well, I honestly question whether they ruined his swing at this point because it looks really good right now.
My theory is always that first weekend of 2016 he had like a wrist injury and he was out for like a week, and I always feel like he came back too early. It messed with his mechanics, and the Cubs, for whatever reason, they can find pitching coaches like no problem. They've got Tommy Hotovy now. They had Chris Bosio for years, who turned Jake Arrieta into a Cy Young winner. Turned him into the best pitcher on the planet for a few months. But your hitting coaches, they cannot find a hitting coach to save their life. Every hitting coach that we've had, now that we're seeing what Jason Hayward can do now, they should be rehired and then fired again. Just it's inexcusable.
With the Ricketts as the owners, that's definitely
they got money to burn. Yeah,
they got money to burn. They just don't want to do it on the Cubs.
That's true.
Well, it reminds me of another owner that we're going to be talking about here, I'm sure. In the
oh yes.
I think I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Oh yeah.
So moving along here, we've been talking about some of the good things that have been going on with the team. We kind of touched on it a little bit already, but some things we might have to keep an eye on. Nick, like you were saying, we don't have any power bats right now. I don't think, as much as I love the Trey Mancini story, and he's proven himself to just have incredible character, be a great leader, be a great teammate, I don't think the power's there like it was a few years ago when he was with Baltimore.
No, it certainly is not. And if you're a baseball stat nerd, like I like to pretend I am, if you go, there's this beautiful website called Baseball Savant. It'll give you all the stats that nerds care about, exit velocity. It'll do it in real time. It's really cool. But if you go to Trey Mancini's page, which I'm going to right now, I was looking at it earlier today. Basically, they have this really neat little chart that'll show you all the batting stats, and it'll say, hey, in terms of like exit velocity, strikeout percentage, chase rate, things like that. On Trey Mancini's page, it's a whole lot of really poor. Like it isn't even that he's just getting on. It's not like he's hitting the ball hard and it's just every time he hits it. It's because we've seen that. Baseball's a weird fluky game. The underlying stats are bad. It's really bad. And what makes it worse is that he's kind of platooning at first base. He's in the outfield, but when he's not in the outfield, he's platooning first base with Eric Hosmer, who his Baseball Savant page doesn't look that much different, even though the stats look good right now.
Yeah.
It's just not what you want. He doesn't have a home run. He's not a power bat. Like, we don't have a power bat at first base. That's the position that you're supposed to have a power bat at. Hopefully, Matt Mervis can come up and remedy all that, but again, like I mentioned earlier, it's the lack of power throughout this lineup. It's a good contact lineup. They're gonna dink and dunk you to death, but you just need a big hitter.
Yeah. Anybody that I know, again, it's April and the trade deadline's July, but Is there anybody that you guys have your eyes on realistically, not Shohei Ohtani, as much as I would love that, but realistically, is there anybody that you guys have your eyes on for a power bat that you would want the Cubs to add to this lineup?
Well, maybe if they don't give us Shohei, they can get us Mike Trout instead. We'll keep it. Maybe that's a little bit more realistic.
We'll compromise. We'll take Mike Trout. You're not doing anything with him anyway.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I think we just re-signed our own outfielder to a pretty decent extension, Ian Happ there. So,
and we can get to that in a second. But to your question about the trade deadline, I haven't even given thought to the trade deadline because it's not totally clear that the Cubs are going to be buyers at the deadline. That's why I think the start for this team is so important. The fact that they're winning games, the fact that they're competing in games, the fact that they're fun is really good. Because if the team sucks, Jed is going to sell at the deadline. Like Cody Bellinger is going to be gone for whatever he can get. Anybody who's on an expiring deal is going to be gone for whatever they can get. And then it's just going to be another year of, hey, maybe next year will be the fun year. But if they're in contention, they can maybe make the playoffs. Maybe they do go ahead and have that power bat. So I think before we get into the deadline, let's see if this team keeps winning, and then we can go from there.
That's fair. So speaking of Ian Happ, just signed him to a 3-year extension. Personally, I am very happy to see that. Again, circling back to leadership roles. Ian Happ's got to be one of the longest tenured Cubs we have right now.
He is the longest tenured Cubs.
Exactly. We got rid of everybody else.
It's Hendricks. It's Hendricks. I lied.
Oh, that's right.
But Hendricks is hurt, so out of sight, out of mind.
Currently not on the injured list. Ian Happ is the longest tenured Cub we have. So I'm very happy to see that we finally got an extension done with him, got an extension done with Nico. So, it looks like we are finally able to keep the people that we like to see in a Cubs uniform, a Cubs uniform.
And the thing that makes me the most excited about that is that if you look at the makeup of the team as a whole, through 2026, so that's 3 years from now, you've got Happ, you've got Nico, you've got Seiya Suzuki, and you have Dansby Swanson, all signed through 2026, the next 3 seasons. I think the fact that they were willing to give Nico and Happ extensions is that Jed is comfortable making those 4 players the core of the team. That this is the core. He's like, okay, this is the core I'm going to compete with. And, those aren't even the only players that the Cubs would have control over. They'll have, theoretically, they have control over Albert Alzolay, Justin Steele, Keegan Thompson, Hayden Wesneski, Christopher Morel, and Brandon Hughes. Now, it's not a sure thing that all of those players are going to be like superstars or even like key contributors. Some of them might flame out, but that's a whole lot of talent coming up. That's a whole lot of talent that can produce at the big league level. And that gives the Cubs a really nice foundation, especially for when these higher tier prospects come up. Or if the Cubs want to get really aggressive, they can start shipping off those higher tier prospects for like actual established superstar players. So I think what Ian Happ's extension says to me is that now to 2026, that's the Cubs window.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting because they do this on the heels of letting Wilson Contreras go in the offseason to Cardinals, which
we don't speak their name.
We don't speak their name, but it's interesting because Contreras is having a rough start to the year. Over there in the Cardinals, maybe there's some bad juju going on there with with him switching teams like that. But it was something where it kind of surprised me when we got details of it. It's a 3-year, $61 million extension. So definitely, I feel like it's a good value for both sides here because you're paying Ian Happ a pretty decent amount there for what he brings to the team, and also it gives Happ kind of an opportunity to kind of hit the market again. Let's say in 3 years, and maybe get a mega deal then if he wants, or if he wants to get another short-term extension. But yeah, because that's kind of been my biggest, I don't know what you want to say, like gripe with ownership with the Ricketts family, but it seems like they've been too willing to let a lot of these guys go, like letting Chris Bryant go, and a lot of these moves kind of had to happen, to kind of kickstart things because the core was starting to get a little bit stale. But I think you make a good point, Nick. Like I think they're starting to establish what their new core is and what the timeline is, and hopefully that's something that they can build around for the next few years.
And look, I didn't agree with all of here's what I'll say about them letting the players walk. If you look in hindsight, as unpopular as those moves were, I know I was crushed like, especially once
Oh,
Anthony Rizzo got traded. I was absolutely crushed. But you look in hindsight, they were kind of right. I mean, look at how we already mentioned Javi in Detroit. He's a shell of what he used to be. Chris Bryant can't stay on the field. That's not his fault, but that is a concern, especially when you have that much money invested in him. Wilson has gotten off to a bad start. I think there were other concerns there about him not being the best defensive catcher. His pitch framing definitely isn't great. We saw that at the end of the game today. Yan Gomes just framed like 3 or 4 pitches that were very clearly balls, but he got them for strikes and caught Freddie Freeman looking to end the game. So, I think there was something there that his skill set wasn't going to age as well, especially if you gave him a mega deal. But yeah, it's as unpopular as it is, they've kind of been right.
Yeah, I think the only exception to that would be Anthony Rizzo, who has been playing very, very well with the Yankees. But
he's got the short porch in Yankee Stadium, though. Like
that, and I think a good chunk of it is he's got a ton of family in New York. There's an emotional connection there as well, and I think that always is going to play a part, whether you want to say it will or not. So, I think overall, I do just want to make a quick joke here. Nick, whose Cubs jersey are you wearing right now?
Take a wild guess. It is.
I'm gonna guess it's your fellow Italian Anthony Rizzo.
Indeed.
I'm wearing Javi Baez. So just kind of case in point on everything we're talking about here. I will fully admit, and folks, you are going to see this because my plan is to wear a different jersey for every podcast episode we do. I think I've got about 15 different Chicago sports jerseys. None of them are current Cubs players. All of them are gone. I got Schwarber, I got Baez, I got Rizzo. So I'm really hoping that we can kind of turn things around here and get these guys to be a winning ball club and be wanting to stay here, so that you don't have as great as those merchandising deals are, to get your fans to be able to have jerseys that can last more than a few years at a time. So
yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, I think we've done a pretty good job of digging in on the Cubs here. They are the ones that are in season currently, so we definitely wanted to take a deep dive on them. But going to switch up the pace here a little bit and talk some basketball, which I think you're going to see us get a little more heated on this one.
I'm ready for it.
I'll just I'll start off by saying, like I mentioned, I am not the biggest follower of basketball in the world. I did enjoy they had the play-in games on at work for me. Enjoyed watching those, but for me, just to start this off, the Bulls record in 2022 was 46-36. Seemed like we had a pretty decent team. You had Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan both looking like they were playing very well together, which a lot of people thought they weren't. It didn't know that the chemistry would be there, but they wound up looking very, very strong. And you have essentially the same team finish 6 games lower at 40-42, and then not make any moves at the deadline to try and change things up. I think, Andrew, you had mentioned before we got going here, Patrick Beverley was the only addition, and that wasn't even a trade.
Yeah, I mean, they got him in the buyout market, which, I mean, that was some of the things that was kind of like annoying about this team this season, was just the general direction of the way the front office wanted to approach this entire year, which you go into this past offseason during the summer, only adding Goran Dragic, who isn't even on the team anymore, and Andre Drummond to basically vet minimum contracts, essentially, because the Ryan Reserves are too, how do I put this? Cheap, and too cheap to want to go over the luxury tax. I can't stand the fucking Ryan Reserves. But anyway, yeah, I mean, you look at that just for financial reasons, not willing to spend. They had a trade exception, which the NBA has all these weird rules about, salary cap and trades, which I don't want to get into right now. But basically, they had a trade exception where they could have, traded for a player for up to I think it was like $8 million or something like that. And, they could have added that to go over the luxury tax. They decided not to use it. Now they are low on draft picks because they, gave away 2 draft picks for Nikola Vucevic. gave up a first-round pick for DeMar DeRozan, and they also lost some second-round picks because they were tampering for Lonzo Ball, which in hindsight is hilarious because he's not even – I don't even know he's going to play in the NBA anymore, which, I mean, it sucks for him because he's a fun player when he's on the court. I think, honestly, Jordan, the Lonzo Ball thing is probably a big reason why this team took a step back this year.
Absolutely.
Because he was kind of the glue that kind of held them together, and we saw that late last year where – once he went down with an injury, they just weren't the same with him out of the lineup, and that kind of carried over to this year. And we saw that when they got Beverly in the lineup, he kind of added that defensive presence to their point guard lineup, because they don't have any rim protection, which is, a huge issue for their defense. So having guards like Alex Caruso and Patrick Beverly and Lonzo Ball that can, keep guys in front of them at the point of attack, incredibly important to their defensive success. And also what Ball did on offense, the extra passing, getting them out in the fast break, and then his shooting ability. The Bulls I think they shot the least amount of threes in the NBA this year. And that's been a trend for this team over the past 2 years where their shot profile is not where you want for a modern day team, especially with how important a 3-point shot is now. Like I was watching the Warriors Kings game. I think it was last night. Their round one series, their game one game, and just the shot making on display from both teams. You have Stephen Curry going off. You have Herter on the Kings and Fox and a lot of guys who can just get shots up from all over the court. And the Bulls, outside of Zach LaVine, they don't really have that. DeMar is great in the mid-range, but it's the least efficient shot in basketball. So I think that it's a really a philosophical team building standpoint where things really fell apart, I think, this year.
And I think the problem with the play-in game too, Zach did not look like he was hitting his threes. If that's your only 3-point shooter and he's not putting down threes, I mean, you're in the modern day NBA, it isn't going to work, right, Nick?
Right. This is a stat that kind of circulated around earlier. So the trio of players of DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, and Vucevic, the Bulls' 3 best players, in the regular season, they clocked more time on the court together than any combination of 3 players in the NBA. So any combination of players in the NBA, they clocked the most time together, the 3 best players. The Bulls still finished under 500. That's inexcusable, and that just speaks to, just like a fatal flaw in building your team. When your 3 best players on the court, no major injury concerns between the 3 of them, none of them miss any significant time, and you still finish under 500. And it's not like Andrew, you mentioned Lonzo. It's not like Lonzo Ball makes this team a contender. Like what if Lonzo's playing, we win in Miami and then we lose to the Bucks in 5? Like that's not. That's at best. At 1, maybe 2. Maybe 2 if DR shows up, if DeMar lets his daughter show up. But and like you said, the lack of 3-point shooting when you have all these guards that specialize in defense, because let's face it, it's not like DeMar and LaVine are the best defenders in the world, so you need to compensate for that somewhere else. But you have all these defensive guards that can't shoot the 3. The Bulls were a great defensive team this year. They were one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. But that doesn't matter if you can't put the ball in the freaking hoop.
Yeah, it's weird because you look at their 3-star players in Zach, DeMar, Vucevic. All of them are, one-sided players. Both of them, all 3 of them are offensive-minded players. They don't really contribute much on defense. But like you said, they're more of a defensive-minded team than an offensive team, which I found to be very interesting. It just kind of shows that the way Arturas kind of wanted this team to kind of, I guess, complement each other was to have a bunch of defensive guys around those 3 and have those 3 carry the offense. But to bring up that point about those 3 being in the lineup the most, I love the stat that Basketball Reference tracks, which tracks, per 100 possessions, what's your plus minus when you're on the court compared to off the court. So I'm just going to run these down here, and it's going to get brutal here. When Zach LaVine is on the court compared to when he's off the court, the Bulls are 4 points per 100 possessions worse with him on the court compared to off the court. DeMar DeRozan, he's about even compared to being on the court and off the court. Nikola Vucevic, the Bulls are 8 points better when he's on the bench compared to when he's on the court playing. So you could say that it's because those three don't really work together as a trio. I think that could be part of it. Certainly early in the year, the starting lineup was a huge issue for them, but also it kind of goes back to you're building this core around three guys who've really never proven that they are, upper echelon star NBA players like Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. All three of these guys are all stars, but are they those guys that can be like a number one or number two option on a championship team? And I don't think we've ever seen that from those three.
I agree. I don't know. Like, just take the playing games, for example. You got the playing game against Toronto. Third quarter, LaVine just went off. He was phenomenal. I got the box score up here. He finished with 39 points. He put the team on his back. He really carried that team and kept them in the game. And because they were down huge. And he was hitting shots. He was making tough shots, and he kept the team in the game. But then you go to Miami, and he shoots 6 for 21 from the field. Like, I'm not saying he needs to score 40 a night in those games, but he can't have that disastrous a performance when it's your season on the line. Like, you cannot have that from your best player.
So we all know how it ended. Lost in Miami, out of the big dance at the end of the year here. I mean, where do we go from here with everybody's favorite Jerry Reinsdorf as our owner here? What do we see coming down next year?
First of all, I will say I'm happy that the Bulls did not make the playoffs because I don't want Jerry Reinsdorf getting a cent of extra playoff revenue. Line his pocket so he can go waste it on the Sox. No, screw that shit. Okay, we are not dealing with that. Okay, I am glad that Jimmy Butler, willed the Heat to a win there and kick their ass and get them out of the play. Get the Bulls out of the playoffs. You don't need to see that there. But it's going to be an unpopular opinion, I think. But I don't know if it's an unpopular opinion.
I don't think it is.
It seems like there's like two trains of thought here. There, on the one hand, you have a lot of Bulls fans that obviously for good reason feel like this team hasn't for a long time. They were not competitive. They were not relevant in the NBA. They were losing all the time, and it's not fun to watch a team that's losing all the time. I get that, but I think the best course of action for this team long term is just blow it up and trade everybody for what you can get. And even though Zach had some struggles early on in the year, and he ended on a low note against the Miami Heat, which not a great look. But again, he was awesome against Toronto, and he was really, really damn good to end the year. And Zach LaVine, I have my issues with him in terms of as being a guy who you can build your franchise around. But I do think he is legitimately one of the most talented scorers in basketball, and he's going to have a ton of trade value. So for me, he's your best trade asset. I would start there. What can you get for Zach LaVine in the offseason? I think you have to start. Again, it's not a popular opinion because I know a lot of Bulls fans love Zach. There are some that are kind of turning on him a little bit, which I've seen. But, yeah, in my opinion, he's their best trade asset, because I'm not sure DeMar gives you a lot from a trade standpoint because he's an older player. He's going to the final year of his contract. Vucevic is a free agent. I believe Patrick Williams, he's been a disappointment as a former number 4 overall pick. Kobe White finally, it seemed like he took a step forward this year, but he's going to be a free agent. So there just aren't a lot of guys in this roster right now that have a ton of value. And Lonzo has negative value because, one, you have that contract.
He might not play.
Yeah.
So I don't know what his situation is. The Bulls have been very coy about, sharing details on what's been going on with that knee. But I'm not sure he plays again. It would be really sad if that's the case, but you can't rely on him being a piece for you moving forward. So I think Karnisovas, he has to recognize that, he went in to get this team back to the playoffs. It didn't work. You have to change course here. They got to get draft picks. They got to fix things. And they just got to, wouldn't it be awesome to be in like the Victor Wembanyama stakes right now? It was literally like the best
1.7%, man. Let it ride.
But that's the thing. The Bulls, they have an 8% chance of keeping their first round pick this year if they get into the top 4. It's unlikely to happen. I wish they could get like a Derrick Rose situation where they luckily get to the top of the draft in the lottery, but I'm not gonna put my hopes on that unless the NBA decides to rig it again, which we'll see. Emster might have other ideas there.
To piggyback off of Derrick Rose here a little bit, again, I am definitely a casual basketball fan. I don't dig into the stats, but I remember when the Bulls got rid of Derrick Rose, I hurt. Like I wasn't very invested in that team, but man, I miss Derrick Rose. Same things happens to Zach LaVine. Okay. There's no, as a casual fan, there is no connection for me with Zach LaVine. I don't think he has earned that. I mean, Derrick Rose had a personal connection to the city, being from Chicago, played his heart out, unfortunately just didn't work out due to injuries, but I don't get that from Zach personally.
I think with the Bulls, there are two questions. There's what they should do and what they're going to do. And as we know as fans, very often those things are not the same thing. No. And there's this quote from AK here. They did their end of season press conference yesterday. This is a quote off of Twitter. Blow it up, rebuild. It's not on our mind. We changed our minds in the 2021 season to focus on winning and try to build a sustainable program here. Now, maybe he's just saying that. Maybe he's not sure. Maybe he wants to talk with like DeMar and Zach and, just to see where they're at. Maybe he just doesn't want it. He wants to keep his cards close to the chest. But that doesn't sound like somebody that's ready to be like, okay, let's blow it up. And like, Andrew, you laid out the situation perfectly. It's just like they don't have a lot of avenues to add talent to this team. The ceiling on the team is capped. We saw basically the best case scenario health-wise for this team, and it was under 500. They probably won't have a draft pick this year. And I think if how do I phrase this? I think if the Bulls, they're at a crossroads. And I think they have a really good example in front of them. And it's a different sport entirely, but this is how it makes sense in my brain. If you look at the Blackhawks, the team they share a building with, if you go back to 2020, 2021, the bubble year, the Hawks won a playoff series. Things were looking good. They had Kirby Dach, Alex DeBrincat, and Stan Bowman was like, you know what? I think I got one more shot in this. And even though that team wasn't that great and they kind of overachieved a little bit in the playoffs, he's like, you know what? I got one more shot. So they traded for Seth Jones. They gave him a massive contract. They, mortgaged draft capital. And you look at them now, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but it's just been an absolute disaster. And it's led to like my worst year as a Blackhawks fan, watching like with basically no reason to watch. It's been absolutely painful. I don't even have Pat Foley anymore to fall back on because I just cannot stand the new guy. But my point is that every team has to fall out. Every team has to bottom out. They have to rebuild. And the more you put that off, the harder the fall is going to be and the tougher it's going to be to dig your way out of that.
Yeah. And last thing I'll point out, or last thing I'll mention before we move on here. You're right, Nick. There are two trains of thought. There's what they should do and what Reinsdorf's going to do. And we know Reinsdorf's only motivation is for this team to be just good enough to get into the playoffs and get in some extra playoff revenue. That's it. I honestly think that's the only reason they brought Karnisovas in and moved on from Garpax was Karnisovas sold him on a vision to get this team back to the playoffs. Beyond that, who knows? And you look at this team, like the only way they can bring this team back is if they go over the luxury tax year. I'll bet you a lot of money that they're not going to be going over the luxury tax next year. So that's not Reinsdorf's MO. I don't think he's ever gone over the luxury tax since that's been a thing, I think. So I'm not going to bet my money on that. I just think they're in a rough spot. And I would argue they're in one of the worst situations in the NBA because there aren't great avenues. Their only really avenue to kind of change things is to blow it up, like I said. But I don't think that's what they want to do. I think Billy Donovan, the head coach, he wants to, he's not going to stick around for a rebuild. It seems like they're committed to him as a head coach. It seems like Karnisovas, he's not committed to rebuilding it after just putting this team together pretty much. I think they're going to stick the course. They might make some changes here. Maybe they trade DeMar. Other than that, though, it's tough to see a positive outlook for them unless they decide to make the tough decision to make more tough decisions and, get this team on track to, bottom out, hopefully win a couple lottery, picks in the future and see what happens from there.
Well, I think we did a pretty good job digging into the Bulls there. And like Nick had mentioned, we'll switch here over to the Blackhawks, who share the United Center with the Bulls. I think first and foremost, what's on most Blackhawks fans' minds right now. The Blackhawks announced the other day that they will not be re-signing Jonathan Toews. The last member of that dynasty core is now gone. 16 years on the team, 15 years as the team's captain. I think we all have plenty of good memories of watching him in those beautiful red sweaters. But time to move on and start over.
Yeah, it just sucks. It really just sucks. Like, I get it, and if you listen to Taves' comments after the game, like he says he'll always be a Blackhawk. It just gets to you. But his body has gone through a lot the past. He missed most of the season with long COVID, and it really sounds like he's going to retire. I don't know if he will. Maybe free agency rolls around and he'd be like, no, you know what? I'll be the fourth liner for the Avalanche, try to win another cup. Maybe. Whatever he does, I support it. He's earned the right to do whatever he wants. You could go through the stats, all the goals he scored with the Hawks, 2010 Conn Smythe winner, 3-time champion. But he, along with that Hawks team, put hockey back on the map in Chicago after
100%.
decades of like irrelevance. It got like the young generation into hockey. It was so much fun to watch. And like when it's all said and done, he's in the top 3 Blackhawks of all time, and he's probably not number 3. So,
where are you putting Kaner?
Number 1.
Really?
Number 1. No question.
Interesting.
No question.
I think you're going to have a lot of Stan Mikita and Bobby Hull fans coming at you, but
3 cups. 3 cups.
That's fair.
And yeah, 3 cups. That's all you need.
Best American player.
Best American player, no question.
Yep.
Yeah.
But for me with Toews, I'll never forget this. So I have a funny story for those who may not know my background here. I did work for the Hawks for about a year, fresh out of college, little intern job, like bottom of the totem pole. And I'll never forget. One of the first few games I was working for the Hawks, I was walking in the hallways right by, they have their locker room down there in the lower section. And I'm walking by the hallway. I had to get to the staircase to get up to where I had like some kind of meeting upstairs. And Jonathan Toews is doing his warm-ups. This guy is sick. He's like hitting a puck against the wall, or like a ball against the wall or something like that. Looks really intense. And I go to try to like walk by him. Terrible mistake. He gives me like this death stare. He's just like, "You're not gonna fucking do that." So I'm like, "Okay, buddy, I'm out of here." So let's just short story short, I had to find another way to get upstairs to go up the stairs there and get to the meeting. But yeah, I learned my lesson that day. Do not mess with Jonathan Toews when he's
do not
mess with him. So that's one memory I got from Toews. But in terms of on the ice, like I mean, Nick kind of just pointed all out there. Like he's a Blackhawks legend. He's gonna go down as one of the best Hawks to ever play. And like you said, like him and Kane especially, really, like you said, they brought hockey back in the map. They made the Blackhawks relevant again for us who never been the biggest hockey fan, but I remember having a vested interest in watching those teams and loving those teams, right? And it's a tough, I wish he would have gone out on a high note with an overtime goal to win it.
If he had buried that shot, he would have. If he had scored that shot in overtime, he would have. We could talk about the draft implications because, like, we didn't tank well enough anyway. But if he had scored that, he would have scored on his first shot as a Blackhawk and his last shot as a Blackhawk, and that would have been so perfect. Draft implications be damned, Yeah,
who cares at that point?
Who cares?
But yeah, I mean, we can get to that here soon. But I just want to I want to thank Toews for everything he's done for the franchise, because I mean, him and Kane and Quenneville, all those guys, they really did something special for that time there on the ice. Especially, I don't want to get into like the whatever. But with that said, just congratulations on a great career at the Hawks, and I hope whatever he decides to do in the future, that he's has a great life.
Yeah, personally, I think if we do not see 1988, 2, and 7 added to the 81 that's already hanging in the rafters. That's a failure on the Blackhawks organization. I mean, and I'm getting goosebumps talking about it right now, but I mean, seriously, all of those guys being at the core of 3 Stanley Cups at a time when they hadn't won since what, 61, 63?
61. It was
61,
it was either 49 or 50 years since the last cup. I think it was 49.
It's just what those guys did, what they meant to the organization, what they meant to the entire city. They deserve to have their numbers retired, hands down. And I don't care what anybody says. I'll die on that hill.
Yeah. I feel like we're trying to put off as long as possible having to talk about the current Blackhawks team.
Let's do it.
We just gotta get into it.
That's a good transition. Yeah. Unfortunately, like Nick had mentioned, we messed up our tank. We wound up finishing 30th place. So our bad for Bedard sweepstakes odds are not looking so hot.
We did not dishonor for Connor as well as we should have. So how the lottery odds break down is, so we have 3rd worst record in the league. We actually are most likely, because I have the lottery up, the lowest we can go is 5th. And our most likely is 4th at 40.7%. We still have an 11.5% shot for Connor Bedard. So say your prayers. We really need Connor Bedard, because this Hawks team was dreadful, man. It was just, the season was just a really long, really painful kick in the dick. It was just, it wasn't even fun bad. It's not like there were a lot of, we have these prospects coming up where, you know, we can kind of look to the future. We're like, they scored that really nice goal, or they made a really nice pass there. That was a nice vision. No, they like Lucas Reichel's cool. Awesome. Yeah, he's one. That's one. Like, they have very little else to build around. And, you know, they're going to do, like, they're sticking to their plan. Kyle Davidson wanted to blow up this team from the bottom down. That's probably why he didn't offer Tannen Taves a new contract. And you look, they do have a lot of draft capital. They have 2 first-round picks in each of the next 3 drafts. They have 4 second-round picks this draft. They have 2 second-round picks next draft. They have a lot of draft capital to work with, which is good. They're building from the top down. It's sort of like I mentioned earlier. The more you prolong the collapse, the more work you have to do. So like a season like this, it's painful. It was necessary, but it was still just painful.
So it wasn't like the Bears where you had Justin Fields doing amazing things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, yeah. All I'll say is for, you know, going forward is they gotta hit on their draft picks. They gotta stay, you know, how do I want to put this? Disciplined with how they spend their money in free agency, and trades and whatnot. And they have to have, like you said, Nick, they got to keep to their plan, get these young guys in there, let them develop. And then when they're ready to go, ready to win, hopefully they have the flexibility then to make some bigger moves, to bring some veteran guys in here, and hopefully get this team back on track. You know, and that's really, for any rebuilding project, that's what you're hoping to happen.
Well, actually, this coming season, they kind of can't be disciplined because they need to get to the cap floor. Taves and Kane, their $10 million contracts are coming off the books. They only have Seth Jones, who I think is making like $9 million a year or something like that. So he's basically the only big contract there. So they might re-sign Max Domi for like 1 year, $10 million just to try to get up to the cap floor. But, you know, I don't know. Hey, we'll see.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Only 1 year.
We can dig into them, do a deep dive in the draft and free agency at a later date. I'm done talking about this stupid team.
I don't blame you. It's a good opportunity to transition, like Andrew had mentioned. You know, the Blackhawks wasn't like our Chicago Bears, where, you know, at least you had Justin Fields to look forward to. But the draft is coming up for the NFL. Is it next week?
Next week, 11 days.
Next week.
11 days.
You know, we'll talk a little bit here about what we think they're going to do in the first round. I know a lot of ideas have been floated around, you know, players versus trading down. Personally, I think trading down again, probably not a bad idea. I mean, Andrew, what are you guys kind of thinking?
Yeah, so I mean, there's 2 trains of thoughts here, and we'll get into this conversation on Jalen Carter in a little bit. But assuming that Carter isn't available for them first of all. And Jalen Carter, he's the best player in this class. I'll just say it on the field. But assuming he's not on the board, what I expect to happen is I think Ryan Poles will look to try to trade down. A lot of this will depend on whether there are any quarterbacks on the board. I think like it's possible that I don't see Stroud or Young getting out of the top 2 or 3 picks. I expect both those guys to go high, and it's looking like Anthony Richardson out of Florida is probably going to be going high too. So the one guy you're looking out for is if Will Levis, quarterback out of Kentucky, if he falls to that 9th spot, will there be a team willing to trade up and go get him? I'm looking at teams like the Tennessee Titans. There are some rumors that the Houston Texans may not draft a quarterback high at number 2 overall, which would throw everything out of the loop for the draft.
Way out of whack.
So there's some talk there that they might be interested in Levis later on to try to trade up for him. That could be a possibility. I'm looking at the Washington Commanders, who they can try to sell him as much as they can. I highly doubt that they are committed to Sam Howell this year. I just can't see it. But
you don't think he's the next Peyton Manning? Come on.
Oh man, I don't know about that. By the way, Dan Snyder finally sold the team. That fucker, get him out of there.
That actually might not have gone through. I think there was another offer. There was another offer. No, he's going to sell the team.
Yeah.
But it may not be to the people that were initially reported.
Yeah, well, he can get a kick to the dick too. Whatever, fuck that guy. Anyway, so if we're looking at players that probably will be available for the Bears, like if it's me, if Jalen Carter's not there, I'm trying to get a tackle because the Bears, for as much cap space as they had this year in free agency, they didn't quite go as balls to the wall crazy as I thought they maybe would have going into the year. Like they still haven't even reached the spending floor that they need to in order to like hit that spending floor. Like they're like $30 million away this year from where they need to spend. And just in terms of cash, like not salary cap, like just actual cash. So yeah, that's a result of not spending a ton of money last year and the year before because they had to work out of all of Ryan Pace's dumbass contracts. But anyway, but right tackle, that was a position that they didn't really address. Like they had addressed some needs on the defense. They got some linebackers in there, Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards. Defensive line, they added some bodies there and some short deals. They added a guard and Nate Davis, who I really like. I think he's going to be a good fit. Got another running back to replace David Montgomery. And, of course, the DJ Moore trade was fantastic. I mean, a highway robbery right there. I mean, I wish we could talk about – I don't want to derail the conversation there. I've said my piece on that on some of my other podcasts. But, yeah, for me, like I'm looking at some of the top tackles in this class – because they didn't sign a right tackle at all, not even like a 1-year stopgap veteran to fill that spot. So I'm looking at, Paris Johnson Jr. He's my favorite tackle in this draft class. He's a prototype, right? 6'6", 313 pounds. He's got 36-inch arms. I mean, those things are fucking massive, dude. Like his reach and his ability to get his hands on edge rushers is, he's unrefined, but when he figures it out, man, he's going to be really tough to get past for a lot of these guys. And he's an athlete, man. He's a get out of the move. So he's perfect for what they want to do in their blocking scheme. They want offensive linemen that can get out in space. I really love him. And if they decide to stay there at 9, I think he would probably be the pick because he does have that the connection to Justin Fields, both being from Ohio State. And I think they kind of value that as well in the building, those kind of connections there. But if they decide to trade down, some other options that I really like Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. He's probably the best pass protecting right tackle in this draft class. He's a big dude, tested pretty well as an athlete, although doesn't really show up on tape for me. But you just watch him and go back and watch his tape against Alabama, like Will Anderson, who's the best edge rusher in this draft class. He could not get past the dude in passing situations. So he's a legitimate plug and play, ready to go at right tackle. And some other guys I like, Broderick Jones out of Georgia. He's kind of raw, but I think he has a high upside. He can play at right tackle or left tackle. And then Anton Harrison out of Oklahoma. I think he's an underrated option as well. Not quite the athlete they're looking for, but another guy who's really solid in pass protection. I think that's probably the case if they're trying to trade down. I see more like guys like Wright, Jones, and Anton Harrison being the pick for them if they decide to trade down.
Now, real quick, I do want to point out, Andrew, that's some awesome analysis there. As you can see, Andrew does have his Twitter handle listed next to his name here. He's done tons of mock drafts. So if you guys want to see a little
working
bit of
on another one,
if you guys want to see a little bit more of a deeper dive into what could happen in the draft, Andrew's done some awesome mock drafts. So just wanted to plug that for you real quick.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So I think now, we talked about what happens if we trade down.
Well, maybe in a trade down scenario, maybe the Packers want to trade up from 15 to take a quarterback.
No, I want the Jordan Love era. Packers fans have had a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback since before any of us were freaking born.
You want the Jordan Love era until they finish dead last and get Caleb Williams next year.
I don't think the rest of the team's bad enough to finish dead last. But anyway,
Get out of here.
Not quite at that point. I do still want to get back to talking about some of the drafts. So just want to pose the question. If he is still on the board and if we don't wind up trading down and taking an offensive lineman, what do we do about Jalen Carter if he's available?
Well, I think it's tough for me because my opinion on Jalen Carter is it's one of those things where I kind of have to defer to the team here because, you've heard all the stuff about Jalen Carter, the off the field incident that happened. You kind of have to defer to the team because the team's been talking to him. The team has done a lot more research than I have. I don't know the kid. So they have a better idea of if they can salvage him than I do. But let's say if the Bears are comfortable taking him at 9, he's not making it to 9, is my feeling. If he makes it to 9, then I think there's enough there. Enough teams are concerned enough that they're not willing to take him. Like, I don't think he'd make it past Detroit. I don't think he'd make it past Seattle. I don't think he'd make it past Vegas. But assuming he makes it to 9 and assuming, the Bears are comfortable, they think putting him in the right environment, a change of scenery would be good, I think you take him because it is arguably the most important position in Matt Eberflus's defense, the 3 technique. The take is phenomenal. I personally still have some concerns about, his conditioning. Even at Georgia, they rotated him in and out and, he takes plays off here and there and the pro day showing was just not good. I get everything that happened. I get everything he was going through and that would be a valid excuse if I didn't already have those questions. But the fact that I see that means I can't really ignore it. Let's put it that way. So if I won't be upset if he falls to 9 and they take him, but I do have some reservations.
I think that's fair, Nick. My thing on Carter's entire time, obviously, again, like Nick said, we don't know the kid. I've never had a conversation with him in his life. I don't know anybody that has close connections with Jalen Carter. I've heard some things that there are, some maturity questions for him. And certainly look at the incident he was involved in. Maturity is definitely was a big issue in that. I don't know if it's far enough to say that he's like a bad guy or anything. That character is a problem. I think it's probably just off-field decision-making and not being in the wrong place, wrong time. That's not the saying, but putting himself in positions where he's at the wrong place, the wrong time. That makes sense. So you definitely worry about that there. Maybe it's a situation where he learned from it, and I hope that's the case, given to a professional environment with veterans that can kind of show him, how to be professional. That would be kind of the hope. And, the Bears did sign some veterans this offseason. So maybe if he's there, that's what they hope. But if we're just strictly talking about on the field,
oh my gosh,
Carter's a fucking monster, dude. He is and everyone's been talking about him and Will Anderson being the top 2 defensive prospects. Will Anderson's awesome. I love Will Anderson. I really do. He's not in the same caliber as Carter as a prospect. Carter is a phenomenal. He's the best defensive tackle prospect we've seen since Quinton Williams. He is just the complete package. He's got power as power. He's a pass rusher. He's a great run defender. He's got everything you want from a defensive tackle prospect. Like you said, Nick, we know that defensive tackle 3 tech is so important for what Eberflus wants to do. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Bears would be willing to take the risk on him is because of how fucking amazing he is on the field and how critical, having that piece down. He's a phenomenal He's a phenomenal player. And, Georgia, like you said, they do love to rotate the defensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
But you can go back and watch their 2021 defense, which was like arguably the best defense in college football history. Mm-hmm. He was the best player on that defense, on a defensive line that had, Jordan Davis, first-round pick, Trayvon Walker, first-round pick, Devontae Wyatt, first-round pick, bunch of other guys that were drafted high in last year's draft. Like, he was definitively their best player. So he is a perfect prospect on the field. It's when you bring in the off-field questions that it gets questionable.
Yeah, I think for me personally, the last thing I want to do is see the Bears wind up in a situation, and I'm not going to go into details on this, but I don't want to see us wind up like the Cowboys have in the past, or in the little bit more recent future, like the Las Vegas Raiders. That is the last thing I want to see for this team. I want to make sure that obviously we want to see our guys win football games, but I don't want to see anybody going to jail or getting hurt off the field.
I think the Bears want Jalen Carter, and they really, even more than that, they want Jalen Carter, but like they do have the questions, and that's why they're doing everything in their power to reach out to people from his hometown, like people that know him. Like, they're trying to get as much information as they can, which they should, because having him in that 3 technique role for Matt Eberflus's defense, absolute game changer, especially on the worst defensive line that I have ever seen as a Bears fan. It's painful. Like I know everybody was screaming about, we got to find Justin a wide receiver. We need fucking D-line. Like, you play the Packers and you don't get a hit on Rodgers all game. You have your rookie safety lead the team in sacks with 4. That is inexcusable. It is just inexcusable.
I'll just say, like, doing my write-ups on the pass rush last year, that was the most excruciating experience I've ever had in my life covering this team. Week in, week out, having to watch the tape. I do know if there's one prospect on the board that is available that Nick would love. Devon Witherspoon. If he's on the board, I know Nick will be getting a hard-on from that.
All right. Okay. I know it's going to contradict everything that I just said about us desperately needing a D lineman. I get that.
Forget the last 15 minutes. Forget it.
I get that we have a massive need on both lines, both the offensive line and the defensive line. But Devon Witherspoon, cornerback out of Illinois, best school in the nation. My own personal opinion.
Real quick, Nick, where did you go to college?
I don't think I need to tell you that.
Well, no, I'm asking for everybody else that's watching here to maybe.
I went to the best school in the nation. I'm telling you, I watched as much Illinois football as I could last year, which is something only a masochist says. But watching that, I am telling you guys, Devon Witherspoon
he's legit.
He is legit. He is the best defensive back prospect in this draft. I know people love Christian Gonzalez. No, Devon Witherspoon, he is everything you want in a football player. He was an All-American last year. He's a Big Ten Defensive Back of the Year. He was 2-time All-Big Ten. He was recruited by, guess who? Lovie Smith. And Lovie Smith, former head coach at Illinois, said he was the toughest guy on the team, pound for pound. Nobody competes harder than him. Now, that sounds like an Eberflus guy. That sounds like somebody that Eberflus would be pounding the table for. PFF had him the highest coverage grade in college football last year at 92.5. He had the 3rd lowest reception percentage in the nation. He only allowed 3 yards per attempt. That was the lowest in college football. 18 forced incompletions per PFF. He's got great instincts. He attacks the ball. He's great in man coverage. Watch that one hit against Indiana where he immediately reads the screen and off the snap just blows up this running back. It's phenomenal. He was great against Michigan too, against the run. I know that the Bears have needs on both lines. Like I said, they have needs in a lot of places because they were a terrible football team. But getting Devon Witherspoon in Matt Eberflus's defense would turn that secondary, especially with the addition of that linebacker, it would turn, like the back 7 or whatever into the best, like in the best back 7 in football. No question. I think he'd be a great fit for the Bears. And like I know he's probably not getting past the Lions because he seems like a perfect fit for them, and that would hurt me. But I'm just saying, Devon Witherspoon, future Bear.
Well, to wrap up our Bears segment here today, I do just want to add, I think Ryan Poles has shown and gone on record that the Bears will not just take somebody because of fit. Oh, we need this position. So they're going to take care of that first. They are very heavy, and I can't remember who the person's name, but he worked with the current general manager of the Blackhawks to figure out drafting strategy and trading strategy and all of that kind of stuff. So he's very much about taking the best player available is the vibe I'm getting, not necessarily what you need the most. So, Nick, you might get lucky.
Don't give me hope. Don't give me hope. It's the hope that kills you. We know this.
What jersey are we both wearing right now?
We've already been over this.
I know. I'm just saying. Hope is in our DNA at this point, and it gets crushed more times than not. But moving on to our next segment here, and I'll give a little bit of background. So again, we're called the 4-Star Podcast. Obviously, that ties into the Chicago flag, ties into the 4 teams we're covering, ties into our logo, with the baseball, basketball, football, and hockey player inside the flag instead of the stars. So every week we're going to do a segment that we're going to call the 4 Stars of the Week, where we pick out a few players that we think are deserving. So Nick, why don't you start us off with our number 1 star of the week? I shouldn't say number 1, but first star of the week.
Our first star of the week is Dansby Swanson. And, we've already touched on how great he's been. He's just been a great addition to the team. It's what a concept for the Ricketts that if you pay a good player a lot of money to come play baseball for your team, they will play really well and really energize the team. And I think he's really brought an energy to the team that's exciting and it's contagious and it's just fun to watch. So we talked about it earlier, so I don't want to, rehash it, but yeah, Dansby Swanson, first star of the week.
Perfect. All right. And moving on to a different team here. Andrew, you want to talk about our number 2 star of the week?
Yeah, Jonathan Toews. I mean, we talked about before, but just the send off on his career as a Blackhawk. Again, we talked about it again, almost getting that overtime goal. It would have been so awesome if he got that to kind of end things. But just congratulations to him on a great career at the Blackhawks. And, I think in many ways he was the Blackhawks. So
couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So just wishing the best for him, whatever he just has to do next, but he's a star of the week for obvious reasons there.
All right, and our number 3 star of the week, I'll cover this one. I know we had mentioned that, we're not really going to be talking too much about the White Sox here, but Liam Hendriks just won his battle with, I believe, leukemia.
Yep.
So huge congratulations to him. I believe he's starting team activities again, if I remember correctly as well. Mm-hmm. So, anytime you can accomplish something like that and then come back to your team. I know they posted the video of him ringing the cancer-free bell at the hospital. So huge congratulations to Liam Hendriks, and he is our number 3 star of the week.
And our number 4 star of the week is DeMar DeRozan for holding Toronto to 50% from the free throw line in the play-in game.
I texted this to us when we were putting together ideas for this podcast, but I mentioned to you guys that I think my middle school teams that I coached shot better at the free throw line than the Raptors did in their game against the Bulls. Holy cow! That's
DR. That's the DR effect.
Credit.
That's the reason we lost to Miami. It's because DeMar didn't want to take her out of school.
And do want to add as well, we have this discussion when prepping this week. The Toronto Raptors free throw percentage against the Chicago Bulls was lower than that of Shaquille O'Neal throughout his entire career. Arguably the worst free throw shooter in the history of the NBA. So huge thank you to DR.
Shaq shot 52.7% from the field, if I remember right. The Toronto shot 50%. So congrats Toronto. You shot worse than Shaq.
All right. So there you have it. Those are our 4 stars of the week. Moving on to our last segment here. We're calling this one the Complete 180. It's going to be an opportunity for each of us to talk about a topic of our choosing. Doesn't necessarily have to be sports related. We're going to try and keep it there. I don't think we are this week, but
we're not. And the intention isn't to keep it sports related. It's just random shit.
Fair enough. But yeah, so we're each going to get 3 minutes to talk about whatever we want, completely uninterrupted, which I'm not going to lie, Nick, I am terrified for yours. But my name is first on the list, so I'll pull out the old phone here and set my timer for 3 minutes. And 3, 2, 1, go. So I know we've brought it up a few times here, but I do want to just hammer home the impact that Jonathan Toews has had for the city of Chicago and that whole Blackhawks team. We were talking a bit about this in prep again, and I think all three of us can remember where we were when Patrick Kane scored that Game 6 overtime goal in Philly to bring home the Stanley Cup to Chicago for the first time in 2010 after that incredibly long, painful drought that all of us are very accustomed to with our current teams. But the impact that Jonathan Toews has had, the memories that will live on for us forever because of him and the rest of those guys on the team, again, circling back, I think Duncan Keith, Brian Seabrook, Patrick Kane, and Toews all deserve to have their numbers retired next to Marian Hossa. So Jonathan Toews, congratulations. Oh, Nick's letting me know I forgot Brent Seabrook. I did forget Brent Seabrook. Actually, I have a Brent Seabrook jersey, so I should.
You didn't forget Brent Seabrook. You called him Brian Seabrook.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's embarrassing. You all know I know better than that, but thank you for butting in on my 3 minutes. But yeah, so hell of a career from Johnny. Incredible leader, incredible captain. Arguably, I think maybe the only captain I would have wanted other than Jonathan Toews might have been Sidney Crosby. And I mean, Sid is just an animal. So I don't think that's an unfair comparison. But again, Jonathan, congratulations. Thank you for everything you've done. If you do wind up retiring, hope you enjoy your retirement. If not, I hope you go and win a cup somewhere else because you really do deserve it. So I guess I'm not taking my full 3 minutes. I still got one left, but I don't want to get too redundant here. So I'll pass things on to Nick next. And thank you guys for letting me ramble.
Yeah, FYI, we probably won't take the full 3 minutes in general. It's just, I thought it was a catchy segment name, so I just decided to go with it. Okay, I'm starting mine now. Okay, so last Monday, I believe it was, I actually went with Andrew to go see John Wick 4. And don't worry, we're not going to spoil it. If you haven't seen it, great movie. Go see it. That's my review of John Wick 4. It's phenomenal. I have two gripes. Number one, there's a preview for a Jake Gyllenhaal movie. It's not called The Interpreter, but he says, it's like, so basically he's in the army and he has this interpreter that he's about to get captured by the Taliban, and then this interpreter rescues him or whatever. It looks so dumb, and I'm seeing previews for it all the time, and I'm so fucking sick of seeing it. I just see Jake Gyllenhaal's bloody head after getting, beat in the head with rifle butt. It's a Michael Bay movie. I didn't know that. I did not know it was a Michael Bay movie. That explains so much. Anyway, it's a stupid movie. I'm sick of seeing previews for it. Whatever. Anyway, preview happens. Watch John Wick. I'm amazed. I'm talking about it at work the next day. And then my coworker is like, oh my God, did you see the post-credit scene? And I'm like, what post-credit scene? He's like, dude, there was a post-credit scene. I'm like, why does John Wick have a post-credit scene? Like, what did Marvel, fuck Marvel for doing this shit. Like, you go to a Marvel movie, you expect, okay, all right, they're going to do something cute. They're going to tease the next movie in the MCU at the end of it. But now all the movies are doing this now. I don't want to have to sit through the credits for every fucking movie. Like, I'm sure everybody worked really hard on that movie, but no, I'm not sitting through there just to like read your name. All right. There needs to be like a signal or whatever. It's like, hey, this movie has a post-credit scene. Make sure you stay behind and watch it. But because now I would have to go back and see John Wick again, which that's that actually doesn't sound too bad. But my point still stands. It's fuck Marvel. All right, pretentious fucking whatever. I'm done.
I guess it's my turn for my 3 minutes, I guess. I do want to make my 3 minutes about John Wick 4 as well. And while Nick decided to be super negative about his experience on things all not related to John Wick, talking about things that don't relate to John Wick, but anyway, I'll say I'm positive here and talk about how amazing of a movie John Wick 4 is. It's one of the best action films I think that I've ever seen. And there are certainly a lot of action films that I have not seen. I'm hoping to get to see the Raid movies. I'm hoping to get those movies so I can watch those. I've heard really good things about those movies. But man, Nick can attest to this. Like, I was laughing my ass off for good reasons throughout the entire film, just because of how awesome the action was throughout the movie. It's phenomenal. The way that they were able to shoot some of these action scenes and sequences and the stunt work that they pulled off in this one, blew me away. Like, it's one of those special movies that I want to watch over and over again because of just how awesome. There's a shot. I don't want to get into spoilers, but there's an overhead shot involving John Wick shooting a bunch of people with a gun that sets them on fire, and it's the most incredible thing that I've ever seen. So it was something else, man. It's John Wick, the franchise in general. It's one of my favorite franchises to watch. It's I went back and watched all the movies leading up to it just to get my mind into it. I don't know whether I think it's better than the first one or not. I have a soft spot for the second one. I really like the second one. The third one is the weakest of the 4, in my opinion. But I think it might be my favorite of the series, just because of all the nonstop action that's in it. It really paid off a lot of the things that we want to see from a John Wick action film. And it sounds like they were doing some spin-offs of it, which is why they had the post-credit scene. I don't know how I feel about that. I kind of just wish it would just stay contained to its own thing for these movies. But we'll see what they do with it. Everything's got to be an interconnected universe, though, like Nick said. So I don't want to belabor the point too much on there. John Wick 4, incredible movie. Go see it in theaters while it's still out there. I will say one more last thing. I saw the Super Mario Brothers movie today with my girlfriend, and perfectly a step down from John Wick 4, but a perfectly enjoyable movie for all of us who played the games growing up. So I just want to shout out that movie. I had a pretty fun time in the theater watching that one today, I will say.
All right. Well, that wraps up our first edition of the Complete 180. And I think it's about time here to wrap up. Just want to say, everybody that's watching, thank you so much. We are planning on doing this every week. Recording will be on Sunday. I think posting goal will always be Monday, but it'll depend on how my internet does after I get everything to work. So thank you so much for watching the first episode. Just want to let you guys know again that you can check out Andrew's work on the Bear Report at 247sports.com and hear him on the Picks for Polls podcast on the Bear Report Radio. And again, you have his Twitter handle listed. You can follow him at AJ Freeman 25 to look at those mock drafts and everything. Nick, I do want to ask you real quick, what are your plans for this weekend?
I'm going to be heckling Mookie Betts from the right field bleachers this weekend.
Perfect. Yeah, I think me personally, I'm going to be avoiding Chase Field at all costs. So thank you to both of you guys. I'm really looking forward to carrying this on, and we'll get going again next week.
All right. Thank you.